Have you ever been standing on a train platform? I mean, you're commuting, you've got your coffee, it's a totally normal Tuesday, and the express train comes just screaming through.
Yeah.
It's loud, it's this huge wall of steel, and for, I don't know, a split second, your brain just whispers, jump!
The French have a name for that, actually. L'appel du vide, the call of the void.
Right. Or you're driving down the highway, maybe singing along to the radio, and you get this sudden flash of, what if I just jerk the steering wheel into oncoming traffic right now?
It's terrifying.
It is, but here's the thing. For most of us, we shudder, maybe laugh nervously, think, wow, brains are weird, and we just keep driving.
The thought just passes.
It floats away like a cloud, but for some people, that thought doesn't float away. It sticks, it loops, and it starts to feel like a confession.
It starts feeling like a weird glitch, and it starts feeling like a threat.
Exactly. And that is what we are unpacking today. We are doing a deep dive into a specific, and I think often really misunderstood, corner of mental health called Harm OCD.
This is a heavy one, but honestly, looking at the research for this, it's one of the most important topics we've covered, and it really challenges how we think about our own minds.
It really does. And we have a very unique stack of sources today. We aren't just looking at the modern clinical papers, though we have those for sure, to define the symptoms. We are pairing that modern science with something totally different. We have a set of ancient texts on human psychology, specifically some early Buddhist teaching notes that map out the actual mechanics of the mind.
Which might sound a little strange, right? Why are we bringing ancient philosophy into a clinical discussion? But the reason is that these texts offer this incredibly precise breakdown of why the brain treats a thought like a crime.
They draw this line between a thought just popping up and the actual intention to do something.
Exactly. Think of it less as religion and more as an ancient user manual for the brain.
So our mission today is to figure out why, for some people, a random mental flash feels like proof that they're a monster, and how this ancient distinction between contact and intention might actually offer a way out of that anxiety loop.
It's a fascinating overlap of old wisdom and modern psychiatry. I'm ready to get into it.
Okay, so first things first, let's define what we're actually talking about. Because when I say OCD, I think the cultural stereotype is still very much, I need to wash my hands, or my books have to be organized by color.
Totally. The monk detective stereotype.
Yeah, and that exists, but harm OCD it's different. It feels so much darker to the person going through it.
It does. Harm OCD is a subtype where the obsessions, those intrusive thoughts, are violent or aggressive or just gruesome.
But here's the part I really struggled with when I was reading the brief. If someone is having constant thoughts about hurting people, how do we know they aren't just, violent?
That is the million-dollar question. And it brings us to the most important piece of jargon for this whole deep dive.
Yeah.
Ego-Dystonic.
Ego-Dystonic. Okay, break that down for us.
So ego meaning the self, and dystonic meaning out of sync or in conflict. It means these thoughts are the complete opposite of what the person actually wants, what they believe or what they value.
So these aren't people who are secretly suppressing rage.
Not at all. These are people who are terrified. I mean, just petrified of losing control.
So it's the fear of the act, not the desire for it.
Precisely. They worry about suddenly snapping and hurting someone, even though they have zero history of violence. The clinical descriptions in our sources they're heartbreaking. Imagine a new mother. She loves her child more than anything, but she's holding the baby and suddenly has a graphic image of dropping the child down the stairs.
God, that's horrific.
It is. Or someone in the kitchen, just chopping vegetables for dinner. They see the knife and have a flash of stabbing their spouse.
And because that image is so violent, they must assume it means something about them personally.
Exactly. They spiral into what the notes call moral doubt. They start asking, if I thought this, does it mean I'm secretly a monster? Does it mean I subconsciously want to do this?
Okay, I want to clarify something right away, because this is a safety issue, and the sources make a really big point of this. The fear of self-harm, like our train platform example, how is that different from, say, suicidal ideation?
That is a crucial distinction. Someone with suicidal ideation typically has a desire, however conflicted it might be, to end their suffering or end their life.
Okay.
But someone with harm OCD is terrified that they might do it against their will. They don't want to die. They don't want to hurt anyone. They are afraid their own brain is going to hijack their body. It's a fear of losing agency.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so you have this terrified person who thinks they're a ticking time bomb, and that leads to the compulsion part of OCD. This isn't just worrying, is it? They actually change their lives.
They try to fix the threat. And because the threat feels so real, the measures they take are extreme. The most common one is avoidance. They'll hide all the sharp objects in the house.
Oh, wow.
They won't drive a car because they're afraid they'll veer into traffic. They might refuse to be alone with their own children.
That's just tragic. You're isolating yourself from the people you love to protect them from a danger that doesn't actually exist.
Right. And then there's the checking. This one really blew my
Yeah,
mind.
it's checking the news. Explain that one.
Okay, so say someone with Harm OCD drives over a bump in the road. A normal driver thinks, ugh, stupid pothole.
Right.
Someone with Harm OCD might think, did I just hit a pedestrian? Did I kill someone and then just repress it?
Whoa.
So they will circle the block, sometimes 5, 10 times. They'll go home and scan the police scanners or the local news to see if a hit and run was reported. They're constantly auditing reality to make sure they haven't committed a crime.
And what about mental rituals?
Constantly. Trying to cancel out a bad thought with a good one. Or replaying a memory, like frame by frame, to prove to themselves they didn't do anything wrong. Did I touch that person inappropriately? Let me replay that tape in my head 100 times to be sure.
It sounds utterly exhausting.
It's debilitating. And here is the core paradox that really stood out to me in all the research. The people who suffer from Harm OCD are usually the least violent people you could possibly meet.
Really?
Yes, they're hyper-conscientious. They care so deeply about being good and safe that their brain essentially short-circuits trying to protect everyone.
A sociopath doesn't worry about this stuff.
Not at all. They don't care. The person with Harm OCD cares too much.
So their own care turns into torture.
That's the perfect way to put it. Their morality is being weaponized against them.
Okay, so that's the modern profile. We know what it looks like, and we know it's a misery loop.
Yeah.
Now, I want to pivot to these ancient texts, because usually when we talk about mental health, we talk about, I don't know, brain chemistry or childhood trauma, but these texts talk about mechanics.
Right. We're going into the engine room of the mind.
So modern therapy might say, thoughts aren't facts, which is a great bumper sticker, and it's true. But these ancient source texts go so much deeper. They introduce a distinction between contact and intention.
And this distinction really is the key to unlocking the whole thing.
Okay, walk us through it. Contact. That sounds physical, like touching a wall.
It does, but in the context of these psychological texts, contact is simply the moment the outside world or your inner world touches your awareness. It's just raw data. An image pops into your head,
Yeah.
a sound hits your ear, a sentence forms in the mind. That's contact.
So if I'm chopping vegetables and the image of the knife going into my hand pops up, that's contact.
Yes. Just like a camera taking a picture, the camera doesn't judge what it sees. It just records the light, that moment of the image appearing. That's contact. And the rule from the source material, the absolute rule, is that contact is a conditioned phenomenon.
Conditioned phenomena. That sounds a little academic. Translate that for me.
It just means it's automatic. It's like, it's weather. If you are driving and a leaf blows onto your windshield, did you do that?
No, of course not. It just happened.
Exactly. It happened to you. It wasn't done by you. The texts say thoughts are the same. They arise because of conditioned stress, a random synapse firing, a scary movie you saw last week, low blood sugar. They're just neutral events.
Okay, I hear you. Logically, I get that.
Yeah.
But for the person with Harm OCD, it does not feel neutral. It feels like they did the thought, like, I thought about hurting my baby, so I must contain some violence.
And that is what the text would call a category error. And this is where we get into the definition of action, or as they call it, karma.
Now, when we say karma, we usually mean what goes around comes around.
Right, pop culture karma. But in the deep psychology of these texts, karma strictly means action. It is the thing that has moral weight, the thing that leaves a stain on your character. And the sources are absolutely clear about this. Action only exists when there is intention.
Intention, so the choice.
The explicit choice. The text literally says, it is intention that I call action. Without the choice to act, without the desire to harm, a violent image is just mental noise. It's ethically zero.
I want to push on this because it's so important. So if I have a flash of kicking a puppy, which is a horrible thought, I love dogs, but I have zero desire to do it, and I don't do it.
Then, according to these ancient psychological maps, you've committed no crime. There is no stain. The mind isn't dirty because that image appeared. The image is just data. The stain only comes from wanting to cause harm.
That's huge because the brain is screaming guilty just because the image showed up.
Right. The mind confuses the appearance of a thing with the desire for a thing. It thinks, because this violent image appeared, I must have wanted it. But these sources are saying, no, that's a glitch in the wiring. You are taking a neutral event contact and loading it with moral baggage that doesn't belong there.
But it feels like it gets loaded so fast, it's almost instantaneous.
It feels instantaneous, but the texts break it down into steps. This is the next big concept, and I think it's the most useful tool here. They describe the process that happens after the thought pops up.
The spin cycle.
Yes. They call it proliferation, but spin cycle is perfect.
Okay, so walk us through the spin cycle. How do we go from a neutral leaf on the windshield to a full-blown panic attack?
All right, let's do a slow motion replay. Step 1 is contact.
Yeah.
The thought happens. What if I drop the baby? Neutral event, just an image.
Okay, step 1, check.
Step 2 is appropriation. This is where the mind claims the thought. It adds commentary. It says, I. That's mine. It asks, what does this mean about me?
So it makes it personal. It's not just an image of dropping. It becomes, I want to drop.
Exactly. It tags the image with your identity. And then step 3 is the story. The mind starts spinning narratives about the future. I'm going to end up in jail. My kids will be taken away.
Right.
And about your identity. I am a dangerous psychopath.
And that's the spin.
That's the spin. And the source material points out that the suffering doesn't come from the thought itself. The suffering comes from the ownership of the thought. It's the identity view.
Identity view, thinking this thought is who I am.
Yes. Think about the weather again. If a cloud passes over the sun, you don't look up and say, I am the darkness. You just say, oh, a cloud. But with these thoughts, people say, I am the violence.
And once that spin starts, the way you see the whole world changes, right? It's not just internal anymore.
Completely.
Yeah.
The sources describe it as fear perception. Once you believe that story, I am dangerous, your brain starts scanning the world for evidence to confirm it.
It's looking for the danger it created.
Exactly. It's confirmation bias from hell.
Yeah.
And uncertainty gets reinterpreted as guilt. If you can't be 100% sure, mathematically sure, that you won't snap, which is impossible, by the way, your brain says, see, you're guilty.
And that explains why the checking just doesn't work. You can never check enough to get to 100% certainty.
Never. Which brings us to my absolute favorite part of this deep dive, the clean bowl paradox.
Yes. This was such a cool diagnostic image. It really flips the whole script.
So, the source material talks about a specific type of person. Their problem isn't that they are dirty or evil. Their problem is actually a lack of knowledge.
Okay, explain the bowl.
Imagine a copper bowl. It's perfectly clean, it shines, it's spotless.
Got it.
But the owner of the bowl, they don't know it's clean. Maybe they have bad eyesight or they just have this deep irrational anxiety that bowls are inherently dirty.
So what do?
They scrub it and they inspect it and they worry about it. They treat this perfectly clean bowl as if it's filthy.
But the bowl was never dirty to begin with.
Never. The dirt was entirely in the owner's lack of confidence.
And that is the person with Harm OCD.
That is exactly it. The sources say this person has a clean mind, meaning they have no actual intention to harm anyone. They're gentle. But because they lack the knowledge that thoughts are not intentions, they act as if they are corrupt.
They are scrubbing a clean mind.
Yes. All that checking, all that avoidance, the hiding the knives, that is them scrubbing the bowl.
And the tragic part, which the notes point out, is that the scrubbing actually makes the fear so much worse.
It really does. Because every time you scrub, you are sending a signal to your brain. There is dirt here. There is danger here.
Yeah.
The compulsion reinforces the idea that there is a threat to be managed.
If you hide the knives, you're just confirming to yourself that you can't be trusted with knives.
Precisely.
So how do we stop scrubbing? Because the natural instinct when you have a scary thought is to try and shove it down, to suppress it.
And that is the trap. The sources are so clear on this. Suppression is not the answer.
Why not? If I have a bad thought, shouldn't I just push it away?
Think about holding a beach ball underwater. What happens?
It fights you. It pushes back. And eventually it just pops right up.
Exactly. Suppression treats the thought as an enemy. It says, this thought is dangerous, I must kill it, which just gives it power. It's the classic, don't think of a white elephant effect.
Right.
If I tell you that thought is a threat, your brain is going to monitor for it constantly. Suppression assumes the thought has moral weight, so it strengthens the fear loop.
So if we don't suppress it and we don't indulge it, what's the third option? What does the ancient wisdom say?
The alternative is wisdom,
Whoa.
or more specifically, non-appropriation.
Non-appropriation. That sounds a little academic. Make it practical for me.
It means seeing the thought for exactly what it is and nothing more. The text says the practice is to look at the mental event and just say, this is thinking.
Not, this is me.
Right, this is a conditioned phenomenon. This is a mental image. You don't push it away, but you don't pick it up either. You don't add the commentary.
So you're saying we need to stop feeding the commentary.
Yes. When you stop adding, what does this mean? And, oh my God, I'm bad. The thought runs out of fuel. It ceases on its own.
The sources mention a specific breakpoint where this relief happens. And I want to be super clear on this for anyone listening, because I think people get this wrong. They think the goal is silence.
This is critical. Most people try to stop the start of the thought. They want to stop the contact. They think, I never want to have a violent image again.
Which is impossible. Brains are just noise machines.
Totally impossible. You cannot control what pops into your head. The break point isn't at the start. It's at the reaction. You don't stop the contact. You stop the proliferation. You stop the spin cycle.
So the victory isn't a silent mind. The victory is a mind that doesn't freak out when it gets noisy.
Exactly. It's standing on the bank of the river watching the trash float by instead of jumping in and trying to swim with it.
I love that. Okay, let's unpack what this means practically. Let's go back to the kitchen. If I'm someone dealing with this and I'm standing there chopping carrots and I have that flash of what if I hurt someone? The old way would be to panic, put the knife down, and run out of the room.
Right. That's the spin cycle and the compulsion. You've scrubbed the bowl.
The new way, the wisdom way, is what?
The new way is to pause. Don't drop the knife. Acknowledge the image. Oh, there is a violent image. Label it as contact. Remind yourself, this is just a mental event. It is not an intention. And then, and this is the hard part, you continue chopping the vegetables.
Continue chopping the vegetables. That sounds like the hardest thing in the world for someone with this fear.
It is terrifying at first because it requires you to trust that your mind is the clean bowl, even when it feels scary. It requires tolerating that uncertainty, but that is how you retrain the brain.
You're proving to the brain that the alarm was false.
Exactly. If you keep chopping and nothing bad happens, the brain eventually goes, oh, guess that wasn't important, and it stops sending the alarm signal.
It's really about changing your relationship with your own mind. It's not about controlling the content. It's about controlling the context.
That's perfectly put. We spend so much time trying to curate the content of our heads. But these ancient texts tell us that true freedom comes from understanding the context, understanding the mechanics of how thoughts work so we don't get tricked by them.
This has been such an illuminating look at something that is usually just terrifying. I want to recap the big takeaways for everyone listening because we covered a lot of ground.
Sure. I think there are three main pillars here. Number one, thoughts are not intentions. Just because an image appears at the door of your mind doesn't mean you invited it in, and it certainly doesn't mean you plan to act on it.
Right. The crime requires the intention. Without the desire to act, it's just weather.
Number two, the suffering is in the spin cycle. The initial thought is neutral. The pain comes from appropriating it, making it mine, and building a story about what a bad person you are.
And number three,
you don't need to fix the thought. You don't need to scrub the bowl. The bowl is already clean. The solution is simply recognizing the thought as a passing, neutral event. That's not appropriation.
I think for anyone listening who has dealt with this or knows someone who has, there is so much reassurance here.
I hope so. And I want to offer one final reminder. The very fact that these thoughts distress you, the fact that you are so worried about being bad, is the ultimate proof that you are not.
Say that again. That's really important.
A truly violent person doesn't worry about whether their thoughts are moral. They just act. Your anxiety is actually a symptom of your conscience. The fact that you are repulsed by the thought proves that the thought is not you.
That is such a powerful reframe. Your fear is proof of your values.
It really is.
We're going to leave you with a thought from the source material that I think sums this up just beautifully. It's about what freedom actually looks like.
Yes. The text suggests that freedom isn't having a totally empty mind where no weird thoughts ever appear. I mean, that's impossible. Freedom is having a mind that knows the difference between a passing cloud and a storm you created yourself.
A passing cloud versus a storm you created yourself. That is something to sit with.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for breaking this down with us. This was a heavy topic, but I honestly feel lighter just understanding the mechanics of it.
My pleasure. It's always good to look under the hood.
If you enjoyed this deep dive, share it with a friend who might need to hear it. Stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Take care.